You are listening to the Pro Organizers Coach podcast. I'm Samantha Brown, a professional organizer and business coach. In this podcast, you will learn how to start and scale the organizing business of your dreams. So let's jump in. Welcome back to the Pro Organizers Coach podcast. On today's episode, I have Karen Lawrence of Our Journey Moments on Staten Island. And today we are going to be talking about the different opportunities that being a professional organizer can bring into your life. And then we're going to switch gears and also talk about the different types of services that you can offer as a professional organizer to your clients. I just wanted to say hi, Karen, and thank you for being on the podcast.
Hi, Samantha. Thank you so much for having me.
So, Karen, tell us a little bit about who you are and how you decided to become a professional organizer.
I have always been organized. I found myself, even as a young child, I would constantly reorganize things in my room, my parents' house. Then after college, I was a vice president at a financial firm in Manhattan. I organized the office. I oversaw the corporate meetings and travel department, the employee fitness center, and was always juggling multiple things. And as you know, when you're juggling multiple things, you really have to be meticulous and pay a lot of attention and be very organized. After my children were born, I did what most parents do. You get involved, right? You get involved with the parish organizations, their school organizations, Girl Scout leader for 9 years. And again, you need to be organized. You need to juggle schedules. You need to juggle the household, everything that you're doing. And then they got older. They are in college. One's actually working now. And one day I was at my brother's and my uncle asked that he needed to downsize his house. And he was so overwhelmed by the whole process and the whole idea of doing this by himself. So he asked for help and I offered to help him. And it was the best thing I could have ever done. We got to spend so much time together and just helping him through this process. And you got to see him go from something that seemed daunting and totally overwhelming. And as we worked through, you could see the release. You could see him calm down and start to think about, all right, what's my next step and what am I going to do? And after that, I said, you know what? Like, that's what I want to do. And that's what I want to be. So I decided to start my business. Unfortunately, COVID was right around the corner, but I didn't let it stop me. And I used that time to really get the business side set up.
Yeah. And I mean, that's as an entrepreneur, that's what happens, right? Is like, there's always going to be a curveball. There's always going to be something that is either standing in your way or a little bit of a speed bump sometimes. And that's where you get your grit from for being an entrepreneur, is deciding that that's what you want to do in life and going for it no matter what happens, whether it's a global pandemic, right?
Just something small like that.
Right. Yeah. Just one of those. Or, even trying to juggle it around a job you're still currently working or having children, or, we are all in different stages. But when we've got that entrepreneurial spirit inside of us and we want to help people, we're unstoppable.
Oh, sure. I think it was the helping part of organizing that was most interesting to me. And even the name of the company, Our Journey Moments, you could try to do it by yourself, but why? There's people to help you. Maybe it's not a family member. I know sometimes people say, oh, I have a sister who will help me. Sometimes that's not the best thing because they're not the most helpful, you know. And I really feel with all of this, everybody is in such a race to get to a finish line. So I want to get done. I want to get here. I want to get there. But Our Journey Moments, the philosophy is more every day is part of the journey and every step along the way is part of the journey. So let's not discredit that and let's work together towards a goal, but you can enjoy it and you can get a lot of joy out of each of those moments. So when I was brainstorming ideas, I just really kept coming back to that one concept.
I mean, that's beautiful. Honestly, like, when I started mine, I ended up playing off of the words of, everyone, it seems there for a while had those signs in their home that said live, laugh, love.
Yes.
And for whatever reason, that struck a chord with me of like, I want that to be my life. Like every day, every moment, like you're talking about, I want to live and laugh and love. And so I kind of played with the words. But first, in my book, I wanted to be able to love because if you don't love, then you have nothing else. And
Right.
then I wanted to be able to laugh because laughter is good medicine, especially when you're stressed. And then, of course, organize. And so, however, like, in my brain, that's what I kept coming back to also is just, love, laugh, organize. And so that's what I named my business. And, sometimes it throws people for a loop. Sometimes it's a good conversation starter. But the reason I think it's important for us to talk about this is a lot of the listeners either have not started yet or they're just getting started. And so when you're just getting started, the name of your business is important, how you come up with that name. And for you that's listening, just a little side note, if you are getting stuck on the name, like it's okay to brainstorm for a day or two and kind of see what keeps coming up. But if that's what's stopping you, then just go with your name with the comma and the word professional organizer until you come up with an actual name that suits you. Because I see a lot of professional organizers that just use their name. And it's, like for me, it would be Samantha Brown, comma, professional organizer. And that's okay if that's what you need to do at the beginning or if you want to use it forever. But I know it's fun to come up with your business name because it's almost like naming your child, right? Like, it's a process of figuring out what is the correct name for this thing.
Absolutely, and it sets the tone for the business. It shows the mindset of what you're looking to do.
One question that I've actually been asking a lot of the people that I've been interviewing is when you first started out, what was something that was more challenging than you thought it would be?
Creating a website. It was everyone said, "Oh, go for WordPress. It's so easy. You can set it up." It is not easy. It is I still struggle to this day. It's something that it just takes a lot of time and setting up the business angle. In New York, nothing is simple. So even getting the LLC together and all the requirements there, the publication requirements and this Department of State and everything, it's very detailed. But luckily, I utilized SCORE. I utilized a small business development core. I utilized Facebook groups for professional organizers. Were great to ask questions and get feedback from other organizers. And really just getting the whole business side down, coming up with your forms, coming up with your contract. And I do have to say, I did create a lot of forms with help from books that I've read and advice. And then after being in business for a couple of years, I've totally revised everything because
Yes.
you need to tweak it for your own business and how you work.
Yeah, and I was just talking with a lady that I was just interviewing, and we were talking about how it's going to evolve no matter what, no matter if it's the website or the forms or just all of the things, the how you work with clients or what you charge, all of those things are going to evolve, and a lot of times it really is more just about jumping, getting started, starting with what you have and then allowing that to grow, but it can't grow unless you start somewhere.
Absolutely. That first client, how terrifying that moment is when the phone rings or you get the content form comes in and you're calling them back. It can be a little daunting and a little overwhelming, but as soon as you start talking with them and you start hearing about their issues, I think it all just clicks and you stop looking at it as a scary first customer and you just get into the conversation and you start asking those questions, and then it flows from there.
Yeah, and for me even, the very first client that reached out to me was a woman that had no clue what she needed. She had no clue what an organizer did. She literally found me on Google. I had just put my business page out there. She found me on Google. She called me and she was like, "Look, I don't know what I need. I don't know if you even do what I need. Here's the situation." And at first, it was kind of like you were saying, I was terrified. I was like, "Oh my gosh, I didn't answer the phone, with my business name. I must not
Mm.
sound professional." Like all of those things are going through my head. And then once I just took a deep breath and I said, "Okay, so let's start at the beginning. Tell me a little bit about your story and how you got to where you are now." And just talking to her like a human being and like you would speak to anyone you were talking to, it took all of that pressure off. And then, once I was like, "Okay, well, I do a free consultation, so would you like to set up that consultation?" And I made sure to set it up for like at least a week later because I had a ton of work to do between the time we got off the
Absolutely.
phone and when I went to that consultation. But it all worked itself out, and it really, like, you will learn as you go. You just
Of
will.
of course, of course, and I think we're just our own harshest critic,
Mhm.
right? We hold ourselves under such standards, and for me, my daughters and my husband are like, "No, like, just relax, you've got this, you know what you're doing," and it's true. Sometimes you just have to kinda let go of that control and
Mhm.
just let it evolve naturally, and I think that's when you're gonna be at your finest, is when you're
Yes.
just really listening to the client, and I had gotten a good piece of advice early on. I was in a meeting with our borough president at the time, and he said the best advice he had ever gotten was when somebody was speaking and you were interviewing someone or talking to them, to stop and listen and not to formulate your response before they're done. Because so many times we're talking to someone and they're speaking and we're trying to think of what we're going to say next. And if you just stop and listen, you're going to hear so much differently and you're really going to get the nuances of what they're saying and what they're really trying to convey to you. So
Yeah.
I thought that was super important.
Because I was just listening to what you were just saying, I have a new question that we didn't have on the list. But that is, do you still get nervous when you go to new clients' homes after all these years?
Absolutely. The first time with a new client, we talk on the phone and you get a feel for them, but you really never know what you're walking into or what the state of their home is. Or, we tend to fluff everybody, a few things. I've walked into some homes that I've said, "Why did you call me? Everything looks beautiful." And then there are other homes that just need a lot more work and the person is just struggling that much more. So you really don't know what you're walking into. But again, once you get in and you start talking to the person and you put the surroundings aside for the moment, you just get to learn a bit about them and it all just seems to make a little bit more sense.
Yeah, and this really is a relationship business. Like, and I've
Absolutely.
I've been wanting to bring this up on a podcast recently and I've not had a chance, so I'll bring it up now. But I have had a couple of clients in my area that have said, "I'm hiring you, but I have hired a professional organizer before and they were more like a drill sergeant." And the first time I heard that, it baffled me because I was like, "Wait, what do you mean?" And they were like, "Oh, she came in and she told me I was going to put this here and that there, and I'm getting rid of this and I'm getting rid of that." And that shocked me because, first off, I'm not that personality type to come in and just tell someone what they're going to do with their home. Unless they ask my opinion, then I will give it.
Mhm.
And there is a good balance between giving them guidance and being, a little stern sometimes. But for the most part, I've learned if I just give my clients the space to talk it out Like even today, I was doing a session and she got to this particular item and she had been holding on to this item for 15 years. And while she was holding it, I said, okay, stop. We're going to stop everything else we're doing. Talk to me about this. Just tell me about this item. And she started talking. And within 45 seconds, she was like, nope, I don't need it no more. Get rid of it.
It's true. Clients talking it through. I had one client, and she constantly would say to me, "You must think I'm crazy because I'm talking." But it was so helpful, and she was one of my easiest clients because everything she picked up, she talked it out, and she just made decisions super, super fast, and she knew what she wanted, and it was great working with her. She had an excitement, but she talked it out, and when you do that, you hear it out loud and you reason it to yourself. So it was so helpful. One of
Yes.
the things I heard early on from someone that I spoke to said, "Oh, I had an organizer once, and they did my closet, and I couldn't find anything." And to me, that is was a little horrifying
Yeah.
because one of the keys is not just to go in and set up a cookie cutter room or a cookie cutter closet for your client. It's really to see how they use the space and what makes sense to them. Maybe it makes sense to put the toothbrushes in a drawer, but if they're looking for the toothbrush next to the toothpaste in the drawer instead of the cabinet, that's where you need to put it for them. And you really need to learn how they function in their house, what their steps are, and what their process is, and then try to guide the home to kind of work with them and enable them to move flawlessly through their day.
Yeah. Yeah, because if you leave, I mean, the goal of this, right, is to hopefully have multiple lifelong clients in a way. Like, yes, we want them to be able to do it for themselves, but there's always maintenance sessions that could be
Of
done. There's
course.
always help later on that we could come back and do. And not only that, but their word of mouth matters. And so when you leave, you want them to feel like, oh, I can find anything I need to find. I know where everything is. And that's why for me, it is very rare that I don't have the client working with me or at least in the home. And, I can do it without them. But the process, it is a collaborative process a lot of the times.
Yeah, you're setting up the home for them, and I think it is imperative for them to be there during that organizing session. You can do some of the decluttering and make piles for them to go through, but you really need to know kind of how their mind ticks and how they work to see how to set things up for them. Even as far as naming files, like, it doesn't help if I set up their file system where I would look for things. I need to set it up to where their mind thinks to look for something. Otherwise, what would happen is they'd be looking for their files. They'd be calling me on the phone. Where did you put this? I can't find it. So it's really just very important to take into account how they think, how they work, and then try to create something that works for them, that's specific to them. And every
Yeah.
client, it's going to be different.
Every single one. And I always try to tell my clients during the consultation also is, if you don't want to 100% be a part of this, that's fine. But at least the first session or two, I do need you there so I can get to know what are you wanting to release? Where do you want things? How does your mind work? Because once you've realized who they are and how their mind works and different things like that, then it's a lot easier to do a session not 100% alone, but maybe 75% by yourself and then them come
Sure.
in and help, give some answers and that kind of stuff. So, yeah, I think that's very informative because when I first started, I remember hearing a podcast where this lady was talking about as a professional organizer, her and her team would go in. And I guess, we see it on Instagram and stuff all the time too, where the whole team does it and the homeowner's gone. And then
Right.
the homeowner comes home and it looks amazing. But my question was always, well, what happens when everyone leaves? How do they have any clue where anything is?
Right.
Real quick, I wanted to talk about some doors that have opened for you that are a little different than what I've heard from a lot of other organizers. And so, being a professional organizer does open up some different opportunities than if you were not a professional organizer. And so, could you maybe share with us a few things that you've done that are a little different from the typical like home decluttering type session?
Sure, absolutely. When I went in, all those big programs on television were popular, like the designing the pantries, the closets, making it all pretty. And I thought that was going to be a lot of it. But then I was working for a while and I was approached from someone who saw my Google, my business page, and she asked me to speak at a conference. It was the Center for Lifelong Development at a local group, and they were having a conference and she was looking for presenters. The real thing was it was during COVID, of course, so it was all on Zoom. And that was my first presentation, and I had to come up with an hour slideshow completely on Zoom. So that was a challenge, but it was great. It pushed me out of my box a little bit and it kind of challenged me. But then speaking with that led to teaching a course for them at their program and facility. And I'm almost done with our third semester now. And I've been teaching a monthly course for the seniors there. It's like a 55 and over, and which is a great age bracket for us as organizers. So I've been teaching there. And then I've had a few opportunities for some other speaking engagements for a Gals on the Go group and another church group. They have a women's club. So I've spoken there. When you start organizing, you never think that you're going to be speaking to a group of 100 women at a hall, or teaching a monthly course for a group of seniors. And it's been so many things that I could have never dreamed of. I really thought I was going to be setting up kitchen cabinets and closets. I also didn't realize how many corporate clients I would be working with. I've done law firms, law offices. Right now, I'm working with a school. We're doing a lot of their storage rooms in the basement, their student government room, their drama and dance performance room with all the costumes and props. And you never realize all the different aspects that companies and schools have. So we're doing that. And we're also creating a bookstore, which again is something totally different than any of the other things that I'm doing. But they're just fun. And you just have to, when you get things offered to you, just take a breath and say yes, you
Yeah.
know?
And can I ask, do you normally charge per hour? Do you charge per session for your typical clients?
I charge by hour. I have one rate for residential clients and another rate for corporate. The corporate, it's a little more because there's just a lot more background work that has to get done, a lot more product research that has to get done. Clients, I find a lot of my clients, or I can really utilize a lot of the things that they have. We don't have to make a lot of purchases. We can reuse different things in the home. On the corporate side, it's a little bit more detailed offsite that on that work that I need to do. So I do charge them a little bit more for that. But and then I try not to charge extra for, research time or anything like that. I try to just make it all in the hourly rate.
Yeah, and then real quick on this, like so the schools and stuff, because that's an amazing avenue that I never even thought of that they need help with. Is it the school, or like do they have to get that voted on by a board, or would it be per teacher would help you come set up her class, or kind of how does that work?
Yeah. The school that I'm working with, it's a private school. So we're not dealing with the Department of Education or anything like that. So it's really just a decision within the school, and their, governing body
Yeah.
approved it. So I just work with one person, and if any of the teachers need help with their classroom, like we're setting up a science classroom, their storage areas and things, all the beakers and bottles and microscopes and everything. So it's all funneled through one person, and they have almost like a sign up if anybody wants help with their room, and then they
Wow.
contact me. So it's a lot of fun, and you meet so many different people, and it's just constantly changing.
Yes, where every day is different. That is definitely a thing as a professional organizer. So, I know that we've talked a lot about the different types of services you can offer and the different types of avenues being a professional organizer can take you. So, I had a couple quick questions left. One is, what is your favorite type of service now that you've been doing so many different things?
See, that's kind of like asking me who's my favorite child.
Right.
Um, I do love them all. I try to, when scheduling, my perfect week would be, one of each, you know. More of my residential clients tend to be dealing with overwhelm. And that can be stressful for you as an organizer because you're with them 3, 4, 5 hours at a time. And you do get to know them and you develop a friendship and you
Mhm.
care for them and you want to see them succeed. So I don't have a favorite type of client, but I do have a favorite moment. And that is when you're dealing with someone who is totally overwhelmed. And they could be overwhelmed by one room, by a whole house. But when you're in the process and you're dealing with them and they go from dread and then they start talking about possibilities and they start talking about what they want to do in the space and how they're going to use the space. To me, that is my favorite absolute moment of all time because that's the moment where they're not being led by their stuff and their disarray. They're now in charge and they get excited, and that's when everything kicks in. So that's my favorite moment.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And that's a really good moment to be a part of. I actually just had that happen today where I was helping a woman that when I came to do the consultation, she was in that place of overwhelm where the whole home was just chaos. And, she was in tears and like she was so overwhelmed. And like you said, you develop a friendship. And for clients like that, if we're doing the whole house, I personally like to start in the kitchen because it's not anything sentimental and it helps
Right.
me get an idea of what they're wanting to release, how they work, give them some time to get to know me before we get into the personal items. But today was our second session and we did her dining room, which had kind of become her catch-all room. And as we were working through it, she was talking about how she had made plans for her whole family to come over tomorrow to watch a football game.
Oh, okay.
And just her being able to say that when she's not had anyone in her home in years,
Right.
like, that was worth everything for me.
It's a huge step. It's that moment where they're in charge of their situation and they're not
Yes.
being led by their stuff.
So, I have one last question that I'm asking every person I'm interviewing because I think it's, like, just a really good question. What is one tool you keep in your toolbox no matter what project you're working on?
The main tool that I use for everyone are extra large contractor bags. It's something that people never realize they're gonna have as much garbage as as they do. And I mean, I always have my tape measure. I have my phone for pictures before, during, and after, a Sharpie to mark things and Post-it notes. But the heavy duty contractor bags are the number one thing. I go nowhere without them.
Real quick side note, if you're a professional organizer just starting out, A is when you fill those bags, keep an eye on how heavy it's getting because you're the one carrying that out when it gets to the
Absolutely.
end of the session. And number two is even if the client offers to use their own kitchen bags, tell them no, thank you. I have bags. I would much prefer to use these. Or you will end up in the space that I did on one of my first pantry sessions where we used the client's trash bags, even though I had my own. We get in her driveway, I'm carrying it to the car, and all of a sudden the whole bag completely
Oh,
goes
no.
all over the driveway. And it was a
Yeah,
pantry one. So it had glass, it had
glass,
like
yeah.
juice. I was so embarrassed. And she was my second client ever. And that happened.
Oh, well, we live and learn, right?
We do. And so
We
from
make that mistake one time.
one time, that's all it takes, and from then on, it's only my trash bags we're using. Well, thank you so much for being on the podcast, and again, it is Our Journey Moments, and you are on Facebook and Instagram. And the website is ourjourneymoments.com.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. And then we'll also make sure that all this information is in the show notes.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah, so
Thank you so much.
thank you all for listening, and I will catch you on the next one. You have been listening to the Pro Organizers Coach podcast. Go to the show notes to find all of the links mentioned in this episode and hit that subscribe and automatic download button so you don't miss a single thing. Thanks for listening.